My wife cheated with her boss and stole $250, $0 from our joint account to fund their affair. Now she's trying to claim half of our property in the divorce, and I just found out she's been lying about everything. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Emily, turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. Honestly, the whole thing started as a fairy tale, married for 10 years, 2 kids, a nice house, and a future I thought we were building together. But then, out of nowhere, everything started unraveling. It's like I woke up one day and realized I'd been living in a fantasy, while Emily had been secretly living her own. The first signs weren't obvious, at least not at first. She started coming home later than usual, saying she was working late or meeting with clients. But her stories didn't add up. She'd be evasive when I asked what she was really doing, brushing me off with a sharp tone, telling me I was paranoid or that I didn't trust her. That should have been a red flag, but I was too blinded by love or maybe just complacent to see it. Then came the little things, her phone buzzing constantly, her deleting texts in front of me or changing her passwords on her social media accounts. She'd get defensive if I asked about it, calling me insecure or accusing me of snooping. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I knew something was wrong. The gut feeling kept gnawing at me, and I started digging just a little. One night, I decided to check our joint bank account. It was late and I was just curious, nothing serious, just a quick look. That's when I saw it. A transfer of $250, $0 from our account to an unknown account. I froze. I stared at the screen trying to process what I was seeing. That kind of money. It wasn't just a mistake or some random investment. It was a withdrawal, a huge one made just a few days ago. I clicked on the details and there was a name attached, James Carter, her boss. My stomach sank. I couldn't believe it, James Carter. The guy she had been talking about as her mentor, the one she'd said was just a business acquaintance. Turns out he was more than that. She'd been having an affair with him for months and she had stolen that money to fund it. I found receipts for hotel stays, fancy dinners, even a trip to Vegas, all paid for with our money. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My wife, the woman I trusted, was screwing her boss and stealing from us to keep it secret. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the screen, trying to believe it was all a nightmare, but it was. The evidence was right there. And the worst part, she was acting like nothing was wrong, like I was overreacting. When I confronted her the next morning, she looked me dead in the eyes and told me I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that she didn't steal anything, that I was paranoid, that I had trust issues. She called me insecure, said I was overreacting because I was jealous. But I knew the truth. And I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. The betrayal cut deep. It wasn't just about the money or the affair. It was about the lies, the deception, the way she had lied to my face for months. I felt angry, betrayed, and completely lost. I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing for sure. My marriage was over if she didn't come clean, and she wasn't going to get away with this. That's when I started planning my next move. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I wasn't going to let her take half of everything, especially after what she'd done. I had to be smart, strategic. I had to protect myself and my kids. The wheels started turning in my head and I realized this was just the beginning of a long, messy fight. But I was done being the naive husband. I was done being the sucker. It was time for some serious revenge. After I saw everything on that bank statement, my mind was racing. I couldn't believe she'd gone that far, stolen $250,000 just like that, and used it to fund her affair with her boss, James Carter. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. How did I not see it coming? But honestly, I was so wrapped up in my own life, in being the good husband, that I ignored the small cracks widening beneath the surface. I remember sitting there, staring at my phone, trying to figure out my next move. My heart was pounding like a drum, and I felt this strange mixture of rage and helplessness. I was angry at her for betraying me so completely, but I was also scared of what this could mean for the future. If she was willing to steal that kind of money, what else was she capable of? And what about the kids? I couldn't just blow everything up without thinking it through. But I also knew I couldn't stay silent. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. I needed to know my rights, especially with her trying to claim half of our property in the divorce. She's always been the type to play the victim, to spin stories about how she's the wronged wife, but I wasn't about to let her manipulate the situation. I told my lawyer everything about the stolen money, her affair, her lies, and asked how we could protect what's ours. The lawyer told me I had a strong case, especially with the evidence of the bank transfer. That night I stayed up reading every document I could find, bank statements, emails, texts, anything that could serve as proof. I also started digging into her phone and email accounts just to see if I could find more proof of the affair or other lies. I wasn't snooping out of curiosity anymore. I was doing it for myself, for my peace of mind. What I found was worse than I expected. She'd been lying about her whereabouts, about her meetings, about everything. Even her close friends didn't know the half of it. She'd spun stories, told half-truths, and kept me completely in the dark. I remember feeling so betrayed, like I'd been living with a stranger all these years. It was a brutal realization. Emily had always been bitchy, demanding, manipulative when she didn't get her way. But underneath that, I thought she loved me. Turns out, she was just pretending, just acting the part to keep me from suspecting anything. All those nights she claimed she was working late. She was with James. All those times she said she was out with friends. She was with her boss, having sex and stealing from us. I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. But I also knew she'd lie her way out of it, deny everything, and spin some story about how I was overreacting or that I was imagining things. Still, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I needed her to admit what she'd done, even if it meant tearing everything apart. I arranged to meet her the next day in a public place because I didn't trust her to be honest. I wanted her to know I had evidence, to see the look on her face when she realized I wasn't bluffing. When I saw her that morning, she was her usual bitchy self, snapping at the kids, throwing around her attitude like it was armor. But I was calm, cold even. I laid out everything I'd found about the money, her affair, the lies. Her face twisted into a mask of anger and defiance. She started denying everything, claiming I was jealous, that I was making it all up. She said she loved me, that James was just a mentor, that the money was a gift, a loan, that she never intended to steal it. But I had the bank receipts, the emails, the texts. I had everything. The thing is, as much as I wanted to explode, I realized I had to stay composed. I needed to think clearly. It was clear she wasn't going to come clean willingly. I decided I'd gather more evidence, prepare for the divorce, and take legal action to protect what's mine. I also knew I'd have to confront James Carter, but I wasn't ready for that yet. Right now, my focus was on her, on making her face the consequences of her actions. In that moment, I felt a strange mixture of heartbreak and clarity. She'd lied so much, manipulated everything, and now she was trying to spin it all around on me. But I wasn't going to let her. I had the proof, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. I just didn't know how deep this rabbit hole went, or how much more pain was coming. All I knew was that my life had changed forever, and I was about to make her regret every lie she told. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I spent every free moment poring over evidence, talking to my lawyer, and trying to piece together exactly how far Emily had gone. She kept up her act, throwing tantrums, crying, playing the victim whenever I pressed her about the money or her affair. She insisted she loved me, that she was sorry, that it was all a mistake. But I saw through her bullshit now. She was a master at lying, and I wasn't about to be fooled again. One night I decided to confront her directly, not just about the money but about everything, her lies, her betrayal, her manipulations. I called her into the living room, told her I had enough, that I knew she'd been lying to my face for months. Her eyes flickered with something, guilt, defiance. I couldn't tell anymore. She started spinning her usual stories, claiming she was stressed, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that James was just a business associate, that the money was an investment she was planning to return. I just stared at her, feeling the cold weight of betrayal settle in my chest. I told her I wasn't buying her lies anymore. I played her the emails I'd found, her conversations with James, where she was clearly planning the theft, talking about her escape plan, how she wanted to start fresh without Me? She looked stunned for a second, then her face twisted into anger. She spat out, "You're overreacting. You're just jealous because I've been successful at work, that's all. You're insecure. You don't understand how women like me have to fight to get ahead." That was the moment I realized just how deep her narcissism went. She'd always been bitchy, demanding, manipulative, but now she was outright blaming me for her own choices. She was trying to turn the tables, make me feel like I was the crazy one, the one who was ruining everything. But I wasn't falling for it. I saw her for what she was, a liar and a thief who had been living a double life for months. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt a mixture of rage, sadness, and profound disappointment. I'd trusted her. I'd built my life around her. And now I was staring at a woman who had lied about everything: her career, her feelings, her loyalty. I felt betrayed in ways I couldn't even put into words. It was like my entire world had been turned upside down, and I was left holding the pieces of a shattered marriage. Still, I knew I couldn't just react emotionally. I had to be strategic. I told her I was done with her lies, that I was going to take legal action, and that she wouldn't get away with stealing our money or manipulating the situation. I pulled out my phone, showed her the evidence I'd gathered, screenshots, bank statements, emails, and told her I was prepared to fight for everything I deserved. She looked furious, but that's when I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She knew I wasn't bluffing anymore. Over the next few days, I started making arrangements. I contacted a divorce attorney, prepared for the worst. I also contacted a forensic accountant to trace the stolen money. I wanted to see how much she'd taken, where it went, and how I could recover it. Meanwhile, Emily kept trying to spin her stories, claiming she was forced into doing all this, that she was under stress, that she didn't mean to hurt me. But I saw through her. Her tears, her pleas, they were just part of her manipulation toolkit. During this time, I also found out she'd been lying about her relationship with James Carter. Turns out, it was more than just an affair. She was emotionally involved, sending him intimate texts, planning trips, even talking about moving in together. She convinced herself she was in love with him, that she was finally free from my boring, predictable life. That realization hit me like a punch in the stomach. She'd been living a double life, not just stealing money but also betraying me emotionally. I was angry, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I decided I wasn't going to let her control the narrative anymore. I was going to fight for my rights, for my dignity, for my peace of mind. I started drafting a plan to get full custody of the kids, to protect what's mine, and to hold her accountable for everything she'd done. The betrayal was so deep that I knew I'd never see her the same way again. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. In the quiet moments, I kept asking myself how I let things get this far. How did I miss all the signs? How did she manage to hide her true self for so long? I guess I was too trusting, too naive. But now I was wide awake. I'd been blindsided, but I refused to be defeated. I was determined to rebuild my life, even if it meant starting over from scratch. And I knew deep down I'd never trust her again, not in the same way. She had broken that bond, shattered the foundation of our marriage, and I was just trying to figure out how to put the pieces back together, without her. The legal process moved faster than I expected, or maybe it just felt that way because I was living in a constant state of anxiety. Every day brought new surprises, new revelations. Emily's attempts to spin her stories grew more desperate, more frantic. She started throwing around accusations, saying I was paranoid, that I was trying to ruin her reputation, that I was jealous of her success with James. But I didn't care about her lies anymore. I had the evidence, the proof of her betrayal, and that was all that mattered. One of the most shocking moments came when I discovered she had been secretly negotiating with a lawyer of her own. I found a series of emails between her and some attorney she'd hired, discussing how she could claim half of our property, including the house, the savings, everything. She was scheming to take it all, even though she'd stolen so much money from us. That's when I realized she wasn't just cheating me. She was trying to manipulate the entire divorce process to her advantage, to walk away with everything. I met with my lawyer again, and we drafted a plan. The evidence of her theft, her affair, her lies, everything was going into the official court documents. I also hired a forensic accountant to trace the stolen money. It turned out that she transferred a significant chunk of it into offshore accounts, possibly to hide it from the courts. That was a blow, but it also gave me a solid case. I knew I could prove she'd taken the money illegally, and I was determined to recover it. Meanwhile, Emily's behavior became more erratic. She started accusing me of controlling her, of trying to keep her from living her life. She told friends I was jealous and possessive, trying to paint herself as the victim. But I knew the truth. I knew she'd been lying to everyone, even her closest friends, about everything: the affair, the money, her real intentions. I caught her in more lies, and each time I felt a mix of disgust and anger. One day, I decided to confront her directly about her latest lies. I told her I had enough, that I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation anymore. She responded with her usual bitchy attitude, trying to gaslight me, saying I was overreacting, that I was paranoid. I just looked her in the eyes and told her I had all the proof I needed. That's when she snapped. She started crying, claiming she was a victim, saying she was only trying to do what was best for herself and her future. But I wasn't buying that anymore. I knew she was trying to save herself, to escape the consequences of what she'd done. The most intense part came when I finally got access to her phone and email accounts. I found more evidence of her emotional affair with James Carter, texts full of flirtation, plans for trips, even explicit messages. She convinced herself she was in love with him, that she was finally free from her boring life with me. That realization hit me hard. She'd been living a double life, not just stealing money but also emotionally betraying me every day. All this time, I was feeling more betrayed than I ever thought possible. I was angry at her for lying, for cheating, for stealing from us. But I was also hurt, deeply hurt, to see the woman I loved turn into someone so selfish, manipulative, and dishonest. I thought about our kids, about how they'd be affected by all this chaos. I knew I had to protect them, to shield them from this mess. That's when I decided I would fight for full custody, to keep them safe from her destructive influence. As the court date approached, I prepared myself emotionally and legally. I knew I couldn't change what she'd done, but I could control how I responded. I stayed focused on the goal: justice, recovery, and protecting what's mine. I made sure every piece of evidence was organized, every document in order. I also started saving every message, every email, every piece of proof that would help me win this. Deep down, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and determination. I was tired of the lies, tired of feeling betrayed, tired of feeling like I was losing everything. But I also knew I had to stay strong for myself, for my kids. I had to be the one to rebuild what was broken, to prove that integrity still mattered. Even if Emily thought she could walk away with everything, I was going to fight tooth and nail to make sure she didn't get away with it. I had hit rock bottom, but I was ready to claw my way back up, no matter how hard it was. The court date finally arrived, and I can tell you, it felt like stepping into a battlefield. Emily showed up trying to look composed, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. She was still trying to spin her stories, claiming I was controlling, accusing me of being paranoid and jealous. She brought her lawyer, a slick guy who kept whispering in her ear, feeding her lines. I had my lawyer, who was prepared with all the evidence: bank statements, emails, text messages, even the offshore account details. It was a mess, but I knew I had the truth on my side. The judge listened patiently as my lawyer laid out everything: how Emily had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars, her affair with James Carter, her manipulative attempts to claim half of the property. I felt a strange sense of relief hearing it all out loud. For so long, I'd been living in chaos, questioning myself, wondering if I was overreacting. But now it was all laid bare. The evidence was undeniable. Emily's lawyer tried to argue, to downplay her actions, claiming she was under stress, that she was trying to find herself after years of living a boring life. She even had the audacity to say she deserved half the house because she'd contributed to the marriage. But I cut her off. I presented the proof of her theft: the emails with James, the offshore accounts, everything. I could see her squirming in her seat as the judge examined the evidence. It was clear she was losing control. The judge asked her directly about the money, about her relationship with James Carter. She tried to deny everything, claiming she and James were just friends, that the money was a loan from her boss to start her own business. But I had her emails. She'd been planning to leave me, to start fresh with James, and the money was part of that plan. She was caught in her lies, and I could see her frustration boiling over. Meanwhile, I stayed calm, confident. I knew I had everything I needed. I looked at her and thought, this is the end of the line for her lies. I knew she was trying to manipulate the court, but her actions spoke louder than words. The judge finally made a ruling. She awarded me full custody of the kids, ordered her to return the stolen money, and denied her claim to half of the property. It was a small victory, but it felt like a huge weight had been lifted. After the hearing, I felt exhausted but relieved. Emily was furious, trying to argue with her lawyer, trying to appeal the decision. But I knew it was over. She'd lost her leverage. I had won the battle, but I knew the war wasn't entirely over yet. In the aftermath, I started working on rebuilding my life. I filed for divorce, prepared to start fresh without her. I also made sure to put protections in place, bank accounts in my name only, monitoring her movements and securing the house and assets. I wanted to make sure she couldn't manipulate or steal from me again. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, just in case she tried to do something reckless. Looking back, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me. I never thought I'd be that guy, someone betrayed so deeply, so publicly. But I learned a lot. I learned that trust is fragile, that people can surprise you in the worst ways, and that sometimes you have to fight to protect yourself and your loved ones. I also learned that no matter how much pain you're in, you can come out on the other side stronger if you stay true to yourself and fight for what's right. Now I'm slowly rebuilding. The house is quiet now, the kids are adjusting, and I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. I still get angry sometimes, thinking about everything she did, but I remind myself that I've taken control of my life again. I want others to know trust is precious, but when it's broken, you have to be willing to fight for justice. Never let anyone steal your peace, your money, or your dignity, because if you do, they've already won, and I refuse to let that happen. Again, now looking back, I can't help but feel a strange mix of relief and anger. The relief comes from finally taking back control, from seeing justice done and knowing I won't be blindsided again. The anger, well, that's still there, at her, at the betrayal, at how she thought she could get away with everything. But mostly I feel a sense of clarity. I learned the hard way that people aren't always who they seem to be, and that trust, real trust, has to be earned, not given blindly. One thing I've realized through all this is how crucial it is to pay attention to the small signs, those subtle shifts in behavior, the evasiveness, the secretive phone calls. They say trust your gut, and I wish I had listened to mine sooner. If there's anything I want others to take from this, it's that you can't ignore the red flags, no matter how much you love someone or how comfortable you feel. Because when they're hiding something big, it will come out eventually. And when it does, it hits like a freight train. I also learned that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your peace of mind. It's about standing up for yourself when someone tries to manipulate or destroy everything you've built. I didn't do it for revenge alone. I did it to protect myself and my children from the chaos she was causing. And I did it by being honest with myself, staying calm in the storm and fighting with everything I had. The most important lesson I can share is that, even after everything, you can rebuild. It's not easy and it takes time. But I'm proof that you can come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more cautious. I've learned to trust again, but differently, more carefully, more consciously. I've learned that sometimes the biggest act of love you can give yourself is walking away from something toxic, no matter how much it hurts. Today, I'm focusing on my kids and myself. I've started therapy, not just to deal with the pain, but to understand how to trust again and to forgive myself for not seeing it sooner. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I want to be a better man, more aware, more resilient, more honest with myself and those around me. 2. Anyone reading this who's going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs. Stand up for yourself no matter how hard it gets. Because at the end of the day, you're the only one responsible for protecting your life and your happiness. And if someone betrays that trust, don't be afraid to fight for what's rightfully yours. The truth always comes out. And when it does, you'll thank yourself for having the courage to face it head on.